This is a Hot Pie Media original.
The contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to welcome my dear guest today, Durg Kumar, who is joining us from Houston, Texas. Durg is the founder and general partner of Knightsgate Ventures, an early-stage impact VC that invests in mission-driven startups to build a future that is sustainable, equitable, inclusive, and diverse. Hi, Durg. Thank you so much.
Ash, welcome to Texas.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
As you know, everything is bigger in Texas.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to talking about Knightsgate and any other subjects you'd like to chat about.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to learning all about impact investing, as you're our expert here. And you have really also unique background. Prior to starting your firm, you served as the CFO of several different oil and gas companies here in Texas. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, how did you transition from this traditional corporate career path into the VC world? What inspired you to start your own investment firm?
Sure. First of all, as a CFO, you have to have the rigor with financial reporting. We are obviously, when I was in the corporate world, we were making investments, acquisitions. Obviously, a lot of that is based on financial returns. So a lot of the basic nuts and bolts, if you will, are very similar. When I started doing angel investing about 10 years ago, doing the same thing, understanding the startups, understanding what they're going through, looking at their financials, looking at their investment and returns potential. So very similar from that perspective. The thing that I observed, of course, is in the corporate world, you've got a lot of the resources available. So when you're part of a large company, you have resources available to you to start a new idea. When you're an entrepreneur, as we all know, the journey is usually initially lonely, and then you slowly have to build your network and acquire the resources. So that's the part that I enjoyed, that I'm enjoying today, initially as an angel investor. And then when I started Knightsgate back in 2018, having the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs, helping them network with people in the industry, and then giving them access to resources to help their business and ultimately help their ideas flourish.
Oh, wow, it's terrific. Well, thank you so much. So really, you're focusing on the very early stage. And I know like in your career path that you worked with numbers and financials. But when you're just starting off as a very early stage pre-seed startup, there aren't a lot of financials to look at, maybe more projections. So how does that work? How do you evaluate those companies?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and that was very difficult for a former financial CFO type person when you're looking at early stage companies where there aren't that many financials to look at. So yes, we are looking at the projections, but more importantly, a very large component of our investment thesis is to look at the founder. Who is the founder? What is their background? What are their ideas? What is the technology they want to bring to that? So that is more than 50, 60, 70% of the analysis is the founder and their story and their journey and what they're looking to bring to the table. So that is more important than obviously the financials. The financials we are all hoping will ultimately come down the road, that if the company becomes successful and so on. So that's where we sort of see from our perspective in that early stage investing, where we're normally investing in pre-seed, seed stage companies.
Oh, great. So really investing in the founders and the founding teams. And Knightsgate mission is to fund an equitable future. What does it mean to you exactly?
Sure. I see two areas, again, using a little bit of maybe financial or IT terminology, input, output. So input is the funding and output is whatever the product is or the technology that comes out. So from an input perspective, we look at two areas, which is what is the mission, the social impact, the of that startup, of that technology. And then the other component, who is the founder? And as we all know from all the stats that are out there, that minority founders, women founders do not get their fair share of the funding. So are there opportunities to fund them? So those are the two areas, is funding the whether it's minority founders, women founders, and then basically funding the idea. On the output side, you've got two types of activities. One is on the consumer side, one is on the business side. On the consumer side is what terminology we're all familiar with, democratizing access. So are there more players? Do more people have access to this product, have access to this technology, and ultimately can benefit from that? And on the business side is related to small and medium-sized businesses. Does this technology enable small and medium-sized businesses to compete with the larger Fortune 500 type companies? And so we've invested in both sort of those areas. We've invested in consumer technologies, and we've invested in B2B technologies also.
Oh, great. What are some of the social issues you're aiming to solve through your VC funding and support?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily, I would say social issues per se, but because I know people always talk about social impact, the ESG. There's a lot of different terminologies out there.
What's the difference, by the way, between impact investing and ESG?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a difference, right? I mean, everything is like a name, a title, or whatever. But to me, at the end of the day, are we solving a problem? Are we, as I mentioned, are we giving more access to the product to people that normally would not have that access? If we take it as something like environment, let's say there's a technology to reduce pollution. Okay. Well, from an impact perspective, that'll probably help the community, right? They'll make an impact on that community. From an ESG perspective, that's the E, the environmental. So it's the environmental part of it. So I think that just puts the title or the terminology, but that's different from the actual effect, right? What is actually taking place, and what is the impact, and how does that benefit the community at large?
Mm-hmm. And do you believe every investment firm should take these aspects that we're discussing here, that Knightsgate Ventures kind of put into its investment into consideration when allocating capital into private or public companies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if obviously it's a big world, a lot of opportunities. I don't know if every venture firm or every investment firm has to have a particular mandate. I think everyone has, in our case, for example, we are industry agnostic. So we are investing across a lot of different industries. But I do know some VCs are only focused on B2B, or maybe they're only focused on healthcare, or maybe they're only focused on consumer. And so I think it depends on what their thesis is. Obviously, a lot of it is also the background of the founders, what the background of the founders is, what specific areas they want to focus on. The other thing I'll bring up is probably what's happened over the last, 10, 15 years, is social media has opened up our eyes to a lot of issues that normally were hidden or that a lot of us did not see. Because prior to social media, you had sort of maybe the news, both the printed media and television media, and there was only so much they could cover. But then social media gave the power to all of us as individuals to tell the story. And obviously, when all of us started seeing, especially, let's say, during the pandemic, we saw the people standing in line to get vaccines. We saw the people standing in line at food banks. We saw people standing in line at the unemployment office getting their unemployment insurance. So that made an impact. So social media has now given us that ability to see where the problems are. And therefore, we as not only as a society, and then we as specific investors are saying, hey, what can we do to invest in these technologies that ultimately will hopefully solve these problems down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, overall, it's really serving a good cause, but there are some manipulations in social media of what type of, contact is joined to whom, and also, some regulation where, some of the big companies suddenly ban specific people who come up and reveal stories, and the entire content disappears completely, and it's a bit scary to see that when we feel like we need to live in a really transparent world and everyone can speak up. So so that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else, right? I mean, there's going to be a good and a bad into everything. I'm the type of person, I'm the glass is half full, not the glass is half empty. So I try to hopefully see the goodness in people of what we are as a society and as a human race trying to achieve and try to make the world a better place. And so that's where we focus on, and hopefully, yes, there's always going to be noise. There's always going to be some manipulation, but hopefully that we can avoid that and focus on the main area that needs to be focused on, which is to help people and help communities get better.
Lovely. So speaking of making the world a better place, how can financial leaders and entrepreneurs make the world a better place, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, all of us have whether it's the power in our hands and, the entrepreneurs, they're the ones that are coming up with these great ideas and new technologies. And as we as venture capitalists, or we as angel investors, we have the ability to fund that, and we of course also have choices we can make. Some venture folks will invest in an environment, someone invest in healthcare, someone invest in something else. And so we can hopefully drive the change through these investments, and then ultimately help these founders be successful. And by them being successful, there's technology out there that ultimately benefits all of us.
Yeah. So these entrepreneurs and founders you are helping to see it hopefully become successful, and then they give back, like play it forward.
Exactly. And in fact, a number of venture firms are started by successful entrepreneurs. Yes. They start a business, they become successful. They get some returns out of that business that they've started, and they feel like, hey, I really enjoy the space. I now want to give back to other founders. So a lot of them, in fact, start their own venture firm with the express purpose of helping the next generation of entrepreneurs. So
are there like specific people, role models that you have or have done that successfully, both as entrepreneurs and then as investors, or making an impact?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone specific, but you see a lot of the you see Jeff Bezos has started his sort of venture fund, and Mark Zuckerberg has started his venture fund. So then there are of course many more that those are of course the big names that we all know, but a lot of the founders of startups have gone on and started their own, or they've pooled their resources with other founders and started some sort of a venture fund, or whether an angel investment syndicate, for the specific purpose of getting funding to the entrepreneurs. Because who better to know the journey and how difficult it was than the entrepreneur himself, right? Yeah. So those entrepreneurs that saw the frustration in getting funding, they now can turn around and then help other founders and hopefully make the next journey a little bit easier than the journey that they were on.
Oh, nice. And those two people you mentioned, founders of Amazon and Facebook, who are, some of the richest people in the world, they have huge visions, to get to space, the metaverse.
Right.
So speaking of that, what type of world do you envision we are heading towards with all these, fast-paced innovation, with new disruptive technologies such as digital assets, crypto, NFT, DeFi, the metaverse, the space? Are they going to democratize society more?
I think I would say let's hope so. Again, like what I was saying before, that I think hopefully we as a society want these technologies to improve the lives of everyday people, and I think there's where the opportunities are. A lot of it is still new, and I'll be honest, I'm probably like a lot of us. I'm learning a lot of this. I'm reading a lot about NFTs and about DeFi. I actually made my first Bitcoin investment about 6 months ago.
Nice.
And so I said, hey, I need to play in this space, understand this. But hopefully the goal is that these technologies, just like all the other technologies that have come before it, will continue to not only disrupt, sort of any, whether industry or so on, but more importantly, give the opportunity to give more people access, more people the chance to participate. And that's the ultimate goal that we as a society hopefully will then improve.
Yeah, very nice. Could you share insights into some of your top performing portfolio companies that you're really proud of? And what do you believe makes them stand out and be so promising and successful?
Ash, I think this was like a trick question, because as a VC, I'm going to say all of my portfolio companies are top performing,
all of my
right?
Children, yes.
All of my children. I love them all. They're all great. So, I think the key thing, as we said, or as I talked earlier, is the founder. So I think we are very selective in the type of founders we want to work with, and I'm sure all VCs are. Those founders that adapt to change, because as we all know, whatever the technology is that they initially started off with, it will ultimately have there'll be a 1.0, a 2.0, a 3.0, and maybe 5.0 is the one that they actually have success in the market. So they have to be able to adapt. They have to be able to accommodate change, and of course, listen to suggestions and ideas. So those founders that are very receptive to feedback, that are willing to make the change, those are the ones that will be successful. And in that, we've got a great group of founders. I don't want to pick one over the other. I think that would be unfair to the founders. But if you guys want to go to knightsgateventures.com and look at our portfolio, you will see all of our portfolio companies there. That is I would say the common denominator is I think we say we back brilliant founders.
Wow, beautiful. So I will maybe mention one whom I recently met in my Texas roadshow. One of your portfolio companies is also based here in Austin. Actually,
yes, Chipper.
Recording this Chipper. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, because they are really addressing a really huge and difficult issue in the United States. And
Chipper is basically a student loan repayment platform. And like most founder stories, the founder himself, Tony Aguilar, he came out of college with a lot of student loans. It's a government-run process, very confusing. And so he said, hey, I need a solution to this. And so that's how Chipper was started. And so it's a personal story that ultimately ends up becoming a startup. And now he's on his journey. And in fact, he just finished raising his seed round. Oh, and so he's excited to continue to expand this platform to help more people navigate the student loan, infrastructure that's there. And then the other thing is a lot of teachers, nurses, doctors, veterans, they can have forgiveness of their student loans. And that forgiveness process is also very, tough process to navigate. Right. And so they're also working with that. So if you're now putting me in a corner and saying pick one, I'll say, okay, Chipper is doing great. And since we're here in Austin, happy to talk about Tony and the great job that he's been doing.
Very nice. I guess we need how many? 15 portfolio companies?
50. We're up to 15 portfolio companies now.
I guess we need 15 episodes, one for each. So
there
stay
you go.
tuned. Well, speaking speaking of Texas, which by the way, yesterday was my first visit to Dallas and I loved it. It's beautiful. I'm such a big fan and looking forward to visit Houston too, where you are based.
We want to welcome you.
Yeah. So your home state is known for its wealth of and the history of oil and gas and really less for venture capital like it's in Silicon Valley. So tell us a little bit about the landscape here. What's it like to run a VC in this area, and what are some of the pros and cons in comparison to running a venture fund in the East or West Coast?
Sure. Basically, we have what I'll call a very competitive spirit between all the cities in Texas, between Houston and Dallas and Austin and San Antonio. Austin obviously was on the scene much earlier than the other cities as far as the innovation ecosystem. And so they've been leading the way in that. But when I started Knightsgate in 2018 in Houston, I saw, hey, there's an opportunity to obviously bring some of this because through my angel investing, I had an opportunity to visit San Francisco, visit New York, visit Austin, see what was happening in these ecosystems and how can we get more of that into the Houston innovation ecosystem. And I can tell you, it is obviously it's not my work alone, but the community as a whole has grown quite a bit over the last 4 years. And now Houston itself is, I believe the latest statistics are close to $2 billion in fundraising last year for startups. So that tells you that Houston is slowly moving onto the landscape and there are more events, more accelerators. I'll put in a quick plug for the Houston ecosystem. There is the Tech Rodeo, which is coming the last week of February in Houston. So for folks that are in Houston or have an opportunity to come and visit during that time, they'll get an introduction to a lot of the different startups, venture firms, accelerators that are now started to come to Houston. So I think that the scene has evolved significantly in the last 4 years, and I only see that journey continuing upward.
Yeah, and especially with the pandemic, it's really accelerated the relocations to destinations such as, Texas and specifically Austin and Florida and Miami. And I also recently moved from New York to Miami.
Yep.
Do you think this is a sustainable change where people feel like, it's not just like a pandemic period. They're actually here to stay and their lifestyle has, evolved because of the pandemic?
I think it is. Not only in the venture space, but even in other areas. I think what people have seen is, and again, thanks to technology, the technology is now there. That we can work remotely and we can be in different parts of the country and we can Zoom into a meeting and therefore feel like we're part of a community. Will it completely replace the need for human touch that we all have? I don't think so. Talking to a lot of my colleagues and friends and even at Knightsgate itself, I'm in Houston. A couple of my folks are in New York. One of my other partners is in Los Angeles. So while we Zoom and chat, we still feel maybe once a quarter, maybe 2 times a year, we need to meet in person. Because again, we're all social animals. We want to, meet in person. Even this podcast, I'm glad we're doing it in person. We could have easily done it in Zoom. You could have been in Miami. I could have been in Houston. But it doesn't have the same effect when you and I are sort of face to face and joking around and chatting. It makes the engagement that much more lively.
Oh, yes, I agree 100%. I'm glad we got an opportunity to meet here in person. So last but not least, you recently wrapped up your second fund. What are your future plans to grow and succeed in the impact investment space?
Yeah, as I said earlier, the pandemic has exposed a lot of weaknesses that we have in our society. And if you believe that, usually during a downturn is when a lot of the great ideas start coming out. That happened in 2008, 2009 during the financial crisis. That's when a lot of the new ideas came about at that time. especially related to fintech and how mobile banking became popular after 2008, 2009, mobile investing. And so now we're seeing the same thing happen after the pandemic. For example, telemedicine, right? So now you physically don't have to go. Boy, one of our favorite things we all love, going and waiting in the doctor's office, right? And so if we can just sit at home and the doctor will tell us, hey, I'm ready to see you now, and we get on the phone, how much are we all saving in resources and daycare costs and in gas costs to go drive to the doctor's office and so on. So I see that continuing. More of these great ideas are coming out. So from a Knightsgate perspective, we will basically start a Fund 3 later this year with the goal of continuing to make more investments in a lot of these social impact type technologies because they continue to be there and we want to continue to participate.
Oh, great. And how can our audience get involved?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more about Knightsgate, as I mentioned, go to knightsgateventures.com and you can see, learn more about. We have bios on all of the team. We have information about our portfolio companies. We have information about our investment philosophy, our approach to investing, so they can read about that. And there's even contact information. If you want to contact us, ask us about something on our portfolio, ask something about the team, please feel free to contact us. We're happy to help out and answer any questions.
This is great. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure interviewing you. And I really look forward to hearing about the next success stories of Knightsgate Venture.
No, Ash, it's been a pleasure. Again, I'm glad I was here to welcome you to Austin and welcome you to Texas. But it's a lot of fun, and we look forward to chatting and seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. You can find more episodes and all of our other Hot Pie Media originals baked fresh daily at our home online at hotpiemedia.com, the Hot Pie Media YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts.